Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's the perfect spot to kind of jump into it. So
Yeah, so I'm Sam, co-founder of Everipedia and PredIQt. Everipedia is an online decentralized encyclopedia, kind of like a blockchain Wikipedia. We're the first app to build on EOS. It's going great, just month over month growth and adoption. We've recently taken a full step and commitment into a full DeFi landscape. I think that's personally going to be the next big thing, not ICOs or DApp tokens, but DeFi. And so we've built out PredIQt, which uses the same IQ token as Everipedia. So it's a whole ecosystem. And PredIQt will be complete DeFi landscape. So we're starting out with prediction markets, going to build leverage into those prediction markets. There's going to be hopefully soon, as the volume and awareness and adoption grows, there's going to be lending and interest and all of those DeFi primitives all in one platform, right? And synthetic exposure to real world assets and stuff, which is kind of what prediction markets allow you to do, right? They allow you to take bets on real world outcomes, even blockchain outcomes, right? You can have prediction markets on smart contract outcomes and stuff like that. Yeah, and right now that's what we're heavily focusing on at Everipedia and PredIQt, and it's a pretty exciting time.
yeah, cool. So I actually, I was reading your Everipedia page and trying to think of some interesting information. So you were born in Iran, actually. So
Yes.
do you want to quickly touch on that? I'm not sure how deep you want to go into it. So how did you go from Iran to, kind of America and, go on?
Yeah, I was born in Tehran, and I immigrated to Southern California as a kid, and then I've been in SoCal slash West Coast, Las Vegas, LA, all this stuff most of my life, and then I went to UCLA. That's where I kind of first heard about Bitcoin and stuff in 2013. I think it was just like one of my friends brought it up, and then he didn't even get into it. He just like told me about the word, and I kind of looked it up, and then I ended up getting way more into it than anyone else. And then I became like the crypto guy or whatever. And back then I think Coinbase was giving like $10 for any sign up. You didn't even have to have the person like trade $100 or $1,000 or whatever, which is the thing now. But I was trying to get everyone to sign up for Coinbase and all of the OG stuff. And then I just after UCLA we started working on Everipedia, and then we started integrating like blockchain stuff into it. And it's just been a crazy ride with crypto. It's never thought when I got into it would actually be as big of a thing as it is, even though everyone's like, yeah, I first heard about Bitcoin, I was like, yeah, this is going to be $10 trillion thing and stuff. I actually didn't even think about it like that. I just thought it was really cool. Yeah, I was like, I started mining like Dogecoin and like all these things, and I was like, this is pretty freaking cool. Like I could see it being used online and stuff, and I wasn't really like, this is going to upend the global financial system as we know it or whatever,
It's funny you mentioned that, because that's kind of my first exposure. That narrative is kind of my first exposure to it too. I was in New York City, I was studying at NYU near Wall Street, and then there's the Bitcoin Center, and then there'll be people in there telling me about how Bitcoin's upend like the global financial systems and bring on a revolution. I think I buy into a little bit more now, given the current situation of the economy and whatnot. But you skipped quite a bit in your background. I kind of want to dig into that a little bit further, because you created one of my favorite sites, which is Genius.com.
That was Mahmoud when we started working together. So he created it, and we co-founded Everipedia together.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
So how did you go from mining Bitcoin, working on Genius.com, to something like Everipedia? How did you get in touch with Larry, which was the co-founder of Wikipedia? So how did that whole relationship come about, and what drove you to what was your inspiration to creating Everipedia?
Yeah, well, first of all, two things. One, Mahmoud was one of the co-founders with Teddy, myself, and Travis, and he was working on Rap Genius before joining Everipedia. And the reason he joined and we started working on Everipedia together was that he basically thought that this was kind of the same exact promise and potential as Rap Genius, or now Genius, because a lot of people were trying to learn about things that there wasn't an actual dedicated site for Everipedia. There was a lot of people looking for, encyclopedic content and stuff that didn't have Wikipedia pages. So it was the same idea. Like with Genius, it was like people are looking for the lyrics and meaning of lyrics, but then there's only these like crappy lyrics sites.
Yeah.
And then they kind of took the market share for that, and it's a huge market share, right? And now they've expanded it to direct commentary of artists and things like that. With Everipedia, it's kind of the same thing. We just thought, what if everything had an actual, wiki article, so to speak? Because Wikipedia doesn't do that. The whole point of Wikipedia is we're just going to have, they're like, we're just going to have, wars or prominent people, president or CEOs or whatever. We're just like, well, why not just put everything, like new cryptocurrencies, other people or projects and stuff? Why does there have to be, like a crunch base for startups? Because Wikipedia doesn't allow startups, right, to have pages unless they're like Uber level big, right? Why does there have to be a different site for like everything? Why can't everything just be on one thing? And so that's why we called it Everipedia, like everything encyclopedia. With Larry, actually, Larry was interested in joining when we started incorporating blockchain stuff and not actually having it be like a normal website. Larry, obviously, he and Jimmy founded Wikipedia in like 2001-ish. And Larry was originally the guy who came up with all of the neutrality policies and all the rules of the original Wikipedia. And I think it was like Newpedia before it changed to Wikipedia. And Larry actually came up with the name Wikipedia, I believe. And he's obviously been a critic of the fact that there's been a lot of systemic bias and like difficulty in actually influencing change and actually making Wikipedia more transparent as it's grown over time. It's become more calcified and entrenched by people who basically just control it, even though there's a foundation. And I actually love Wikipedia. Part of the reason we started working on Everipedia is like Wikipedia is one of my favorite sites, right? Everyone likes it. It's just it would be cool if there was another platform that basically had the same ethos, but with more content, literally with more stuff that's actually just not on Wikipedia. For whatever reason, Wikipedia doesn't allow those pages, right? So Larry, when we said, we're building a protocol kind of thing on the blockchain that allows no one to influence or entrench ownership of the protocol or rulemaking of how things are done, he was really interested in that. And so he basically composed the original rules and the community standards and stuff of Everipedia on the blockchain. So he's been a really good contributor to kind of the foundation of the current site.
I see. Very cool. Very cool. I mean, I was just a little curious because, again, I feel like you guys come from very different backgrounds. It's just a little curious how that whole relationship happened. And, obviously you guys go on to build a great team that, build a lot of fantastic projects. Let's get into PredIQt a little bit. I had you on the show the other day, you and Will. We talked about PredIQt. So I think a lot of people will still have a bit of trouble, like making the leap from Everipedia to PredIQt. And, you said you're kind of really leaning heavy into this DeFi space with PredIQt. So how do you see like Everipedia like playing that role? I remember you mentioned something about like the two pillars of Everipedia, one being Everipedia itself and one being PredIQt. Can you kind of go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so actually we get this thought a lot in the sense that, we've built a pretty good consumer application, one of the biggest ones on EOS and stuff. How come you guys are doing DeFi stuff now, right? First of all, I just as a strict thing, I think the next big revolution in crypto and everything is decentralized finance. Like just saying it right now, the components of which are like loans, stablecoins, synthetic assets, lending, being able to get, interest rate payments for deposits, all of these things, right? And so we could have done anything, right? We could have just been like, okay, actually this is totally separate from Everipedia, and then it doesn't even use the token or whatever, and we have like a compound finance kind of product or something. But we didn't want to do that because we think that prediction markets, particularly we like to call it knowledge markets, are part of the whole ethos of bringing knowledge and real world events on chain, onto the blockchain. So that's why we actually started focusing on prediction markets for Everipedia with the same token and stuff. And then we thought, well, prediction market is kind of the foundation of a lot of this DeFi stuff, because it allows you to get exposure to any kind of event, whether it's the price of an asset or the outcome of an event of, a political election or any of this stuff. And then from there, you can build the features and the services that people would want as they're using this system of exposure to real world events, like leverage, like lending out their token for another type of token to get exposure to two different things at the same time, right? And we think it's actually much more powerful value proposition to have like an all-in-one DeFi platform, instead of like go to Compound if you want to borrow, you DAI against Ether or something like that, or go to Maker if you want to create a stable coin and then go do something else with it or lend it out or something. I think one platform that kind of has everything built into it as an ecosystem is extremely powerful. So instead of just being like, well, the IQ token is for Everipedia, and then this is not the same thing, and we're just going to have either another token or no token or whatever. We thought, well, it makes way more sense to have the network effect around DeFi, right? And so that's why we kind of did this as one pillar is content, historical content, social usage of Adapt, which is Everipedia, and then the other pillar is every kind of financial market. Free market activity you could do on chain, basically. That's how we think about it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't make that jump quite easily, but obviously you guys put a lot more thought into it. I think
it's not even so much. Well, one of the things is like it's not even so much like a jump, but so to speak, like it's more of a. I think in order for any of these dApps to actually be successful in the long term, there has to be sound financial primitives around the token, right? I think like you said, the market's maturing. No one's actually valuing tokens as like, oh, there's this iPhone app that has like a token in it that you can use to pay for stuff or something like that. No one actually, rightfully so, no one actually thinks those tokens are valuable anymore, right? Like, I mean, they're not. It's far better to use either BTC or a stablecoin or whatever as payments in any kind of decentralized ecosystem, right? But what there needs to be actual financial products. There needs to be lending. There should be synthetic assets and all this stuff, and we don't see that in the ecosystem right now, especially on EOS, on Ethereum. To be honest, it's actually much more mature. It's coming along quicker. But on EOS, we kind of see it as our opportunity and kind of our responsibility as one of the first groups to really embrace like EOS and our reputation as like one of the earliest builders to kind of bring that ecosystem to the EOS mainnet.
So okay, so I'm gonna put it in a context that I understand and like the way I looked at kind of my perspective on blockchain and Bitcoin in general. So when I first saw Bitcoin, I didn't think it was going to overdo the banks or whatever. I just thought that it was like a truly global open financial system that anyone could participate in. And one of the really interesting things I thought about was, now that we have this global open financial system, we could build business on top of it. And I think you're kind of touching on a point where we do have kind of business on top right now in the form of different token projects, but there isn't that mature financial infrastructure for them to really take advantage of, like a traditional, business in the U.S. would be able to. They can't kind of loan out their, put up their tokens as collateral to get some stable coin to kind of fund the operation, and kind of, I guess, like general more DeFi finance stuff that again traditional business will have access to, and that these kind of instruments that they were able to access through a banking system, which is not available currently in the cryptocurrency space. Would you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, okay. Exactly, right. And so I think more about like everyone says like, okay, well, is crypto good for anything other than speculating or for like any of this, stuff would be if it was the potential and infrastructure to do other things, right? Like you said, to lend it out or to have any of the classical banking activities that, make business go around and fuel growth and earning and stuff like that. And that doesn't exist until sort of now, right? On Ethereum, it's growing pretty quickly. And I think that once these things actually grow, there's 100% going to be real usage of crypto outside of speculation. I mean, think about it. People that use PredIQt right now, right, that bet on these markets, and then they basically get exposure to real world events like the SpaceX launch, like elections. There's even like, I think, a Blockone market right now, like who or like when they're going to vote for block producers and things like that, right? Those are real world events that people are, investing in or getting exposure. And I don't think that's 100% not speculating on the price of a token, right? Like, and just using exchanges to like pump and dump coins, right? So you're already seeing actual usage of blockchain for real things once these things are growing, right? First, you have to actually have that usage before people can even possibly use crypto for anything other than speculation.
Yeah, no, I think, now that you brought it up again, I think it does make sense. The very simplistic way of people thinking about it is like these are just kind of gambling on real world events, and I think there's an element to that. But like you said, people are getting into that interaction, that first interaction on cryptocurrency, that is just more than speculating on tokens. So yeah. So you
I mean,
go ahead.
I get what so let me just I get the whole point of, oh, these are like gambling on real world events and stuff, but I strongly push back against that idea because like this is actual real financial activity. It's like, sure, you can say, well, Goldman Sachs just bets on the interest rate of the Federal Reserve or something, or like when people invest in like stocks or something, they're really just gambling on the earnings call or something like that. But I don't think that's the right way to look at it. And the right way to look at it is that these are legitimate financial, this is legitimate financial activity that allows markets to form around productive things, right? It's not like we're creating a blockchain casino with slots or dice and stuff like that, which is a cool game, right? That exists, right? There's EOS bet and stuff like that, and it's cool. People enjoy it and they play it, and that's gambling, right? I mean, people are interested in that stuff. Hopefully, they enjoy it. This is not the same thing. So I know a lot of people think like, oh, well, this is gambling. Compound finance is just a way that you can borrow more ether so you can gamble more on its price or whatever. But it's like, no, it's actually, you're missing the actual point. The actual point is people can earn interest on their deposits instead of, having to convert their ether to dollars to earn interest in a bank, right? So there's real activity here that's completely different from gambling. But I understand where if people kind of miss that, it all just seems like at the end of the day, it just seems like banks gamble on mortgages, or like, Goldman Sachs gambles on IPOs or something like that. But that's clearly not the case, right? Mortgages allow people to own real estate, allows people to buy houses, and it's not just a gambling activity.
I'm actually really happy that you kind of pushed back on that a little bit, because now that you brought it up, like what are corn futures, or what are soybean futures? Those are, yeah, you can see them as kind of gambling, and there is like an element of taking the risk, but that's what financial markets do, right? They kind of weigh the risk and benefit, the reward, and the risk associated with different kind of investment vehicles. And
yeah, and so that's exactly right? So the whole point is, for example, you brought up like corn futures or whatever. On one hand, yeah, like people are gambling about the future price of corn or whatever, but on the other hand, yeah, but no, you're missing the more useful aspect of corn futures. It allows, using market dynamics, it allows farmers to have security about the drop in the price of corn, right? If you're a farmer that, farms corn, right? Hopefully you're thinking the price of corn will go up so you can make more revenue, right? But if there's corn futures, you can hold a mixture of the inverse of those futures. So if the price of corn goes down and your crops aren't worth as much, your corn futures essentially give you a return, right? And so you have like safety insurance or other hedging, even insurance crop that don't happen, financial instruments that go through a situation where farmers can't create crops, right? So all of these things have really, really, really useful functions for society using the free market, right? That's not just gambling, right? And a lot of people miss that. So that's why I always try to push back. It's like, oh, you guys creating a betting market? It's like, no, we're actually creating the future of like DeFi on EOS and blockchain. Like, it's like, people just don't really think about the bigger picture a lot of times.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I'm really happy you kind of push back on, the notion of gambling. That is just gambling. Again, just to kind of rephrase what you said, partly because of the video connection issue, but partly just kind of make sure we're on the same page, is that these things are market mechanism. As a capitalist free society, it provides a market mechanism for the farmers to predictably have that predictable income, so he can continue farming when he sells that future. And I can see where you go now with PredIQt, kind of where prediction markets is kind of one of these, as you said, DeFi primitives on which these more complex instruments could be built on top of. So
yeah, exactly. Like, let me even give you an example. Like, so there's multiple markets on Predict you could like take part in, right? You could take part in like the SpaceX launch or like so maybe the price of oil or something like that, right? You can basically have a different basket of these shares that you get exposure to these different events in different mixtures, right? Like maybe you want to have like extra exposure to a Tesla market, and then also no shares for oil, like that oil will not do well. So you're like double exposure to like renewable, and Tesla and oil going down and stuff like that, right? You can kind of build these really cool custom exposures to different real world events, right? And I think that's much different than like rolling a dice or rolling the slot machine or something, right? And we're actually going to probably in the future come up with a feature that allows you to kind of see a portfolio or package your predict shares so that you can actually like build these interesting buckets of different exposures.
wow, I mean, yeah, again, I never really thought about it that way, because I mean, you talk about double exposure. I think a lot of people who, well, one, if they're not U.S. citizens, that is their first exposure, and even if they're U.S. citizens, they might not have money in the stock market. I know tons of people don't have money in the stock market. They read about Tesla, they read about SpaceX, but it's just not something that go buying a space. Well, you can't even buy a SpaceX share, share,
Yeah.
right? It's a private company, and just buying Tesla shares is it's not something that everyone can do, right? It's expensive. The process is long. You gotta get maybe you go through like an index fund or whatever, but it's a tough process. So what you're doing is kind of bringing financial instruments, really complex financial instruments, down to the everyday person, and in a way that the everyday person I think would be able to understand, which is another pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, no, that's what's really exciting. That's why we're really working really hard on it, and that's exactly right. Like now, you can finally have exposure to SpaceX's success without being like an accredited investor or something like that to have the stock, right, or something like that. And that's what's really that's what's democratizing about global blockchain applications.
Mhm. Well, on that note, are you guys kind of obviously these are touchy subjects when you talk about stocks, even though what you guys are doing are not kind of stocks. Um, Obviously, regulation comes into mind. The U.S. government's not very forgiving for these kind of experimentations. So, what's been your team's attitude towards it? Do you foresee any legal troubles? Are you guys making preparations to kind of?
Yeah, so we make sure to abide by all U.S. and international laws concerning these things. So a few things. One is the entire protocol level, which is what we're building, similar to Augur and other protocol level application, is not controlled by us. We don't, as a company or like just wholly, we don't create the markets or resolve them unilaterally. We don't hold funds. We're not like a house, so to speak. We don't do any of that. So as far as we're concerned, we're building a protocol. Given sufficient time, it is sufficiently decentralized. Hopefully there'll be more groups working on features of this stuff. We've actually already had a lot of people interested in like looking over the API and docs and trying to do some cool things. And so the idea is, given sufficient time, if we disappeared, which we're not going to do, but if we poof, like just vanished from the face of the world, it wouldn't matter, right? Like that's the whole point with Bitcoin. That's the whole point that Block1 is seeing with the EOS mainnet, right? It's like obviously everyone wants Block1 involved, but the whole point is without them, everything should be just fine. As we take the exact same view of PredIQt. So like we don't hold funds, we don't settle markets. It's the IQ holders that actually settle the markets. We don't stop people from building front end interfaces into the protocol because we can't. It's on the mainnet, right? So we're making sure to do everything right. We've got a pretty good legal, and we understand how to make sure to do things methodically. And on this front, you don't want to move fast and break things, right? You want to make sure to do things so that it doesn't jeopardize the whole endeavor that you're doing.
Yeah. So we as a project, we're definitely looking at the Everipedia, the PredIQt API. We have a lot of interesting ideas. A lot of our partners have a lot of interesting ideas. We're just kind of waiting for that moment to when it's right, and we would jump on it. You also kind of open another can of worms that I'm gonna take you on the offer, which is Block1. Now, you guys work very closely with Block1, being one of the first and biggest project funded by Block1, and now Block1 is getting into governance. They're starting to vote. So I just kind of want to ask, what like in general, what's been the experience of working with Block1? I feel like we have to disclose that you might be slightly biased, again, because you guys are funded by Block1. But as honest as you can, what's like the benefits, and do you see why the community can be frustrated at the what's perceived as kind of the inactivity of Block1?
Yeah, so a few things. So we, for people that don't know, so we were the first project to announce that we're building on EOS. This was like in late 2017. We were the first. We're the first team to get Block1/EOS VC investment through Galaxy Digital, which they're one of the EOS VC partners. I wouldn't really say we work closely with Block1, more that we have great support and we've received good investment, because one of the things that is that, in fact, I understand what you said, in the sense like it does sound frustrating, and it also, you understand why they do the things they do. Is like the whole point is they want to only get involved, I think, incrementally. I mean, this is all just my opinion. When it's time to do that, all right, when their actions aren't unilaterally creating dependence on them from the mainnet, right? And so they're really capable company, obviously, from the ICO and stuff. I totally understand this gap in like communication and expectation between B1 and like the mainnet EOS community, just because of the evolving nature of like both the mainnet and then Block1's projects and stuff like that. Although I'm really excited about the recent announcements of like the EOS Foundation or other work, and the EOS New York guys heading a lot of the community outreach from Block1 to the mainnet community. So I think a lot of that gap is gonna be bridged. But yeah, like I totally understand it. It's difficult, right? It's very difficult in the sense like they have their own views. Obviously, the community has their own views. We have our own views. Each individual and project has their own beliefs, wants, desires, opinions. But I think if I were to make a good assumption and guess, I think the second half of this year there will be much more much more direct and very active involvement by B1 and stuff like that compared to last year. Okay, I think that's just my hunch here, and it makes sense given all the recent tweets from B1 guys like Brendan and also the voting announcement, right? So I think we can really expect to see some crazy cool stuff in the next 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, again, I feel like the EOS community could sometimes be a bit narrow-minded, and I'm gonna get burned at the stake for saying that. Um, I think you're right. I think Block One is a very important player in this EOS ecosystem, but they're just one of the many players, right? Like we shouldn't. It's not healthy for us to kind of depend and look on Block One to do everything for us. To improve the
Yeah,
mainnet.
I mean, to also defend the community a little bit too. Yeah, I mean, there's individuals that are very closed-minded and stuff like that, but I totally understand, right? The whole point is, the ICO was a massive success. Massive success might even be an understatement. It was an incredible success, right? And I guess the view is, reality is really different, but a lot of people didn't expect, 2019 or 18 or whatever to just kind of just be a quiet lull in terms of their involvement and stuff. And so it's a little bit frustrating, but I know they're doing a lot of good stuff, and I think it's really obvious that given the recent public announcements and stuff, that it's just the beginning of a lot of cool things to come this year. I also just as a disclaimer, actually I don't know. Like I am truly guessing. Like I'm not like a Blockone employee. I don't actually have that direct insight or whatever. But I feel confident in saying that. These are my opinions, but like I feel quite confident in that. And in fact, that's I would bet or whatever. I would participate in a predict market about that.
I was gonna say we should have a prediction market around
Yeah.
that. I was just gonna add that I feel like Everipedia, you guys maybe don't connect with the Twitter EOS community, as much as the EOS Twitter community would like. But I do feel like when you're just excited as everybody else when it comes to Block One voting. I think a lot of people are looking forward to that as a community. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I understand, you have a very high expectation. But also kind of want to put a little damper on it. It's like I'm not sure if Block One voting is going to change things that dramatically. I kind of want to not have my hopes up too much, just in case it's to be let down again. So
yeah, no, okay, so exactly. So two things. One is I'm actually trying to be much more active in the Twitter, EOS, and crypto community. So like I'm pretty available. People tweet at me, I will reply and everything like that. I think you're right in the sense that we've been a lot more like global based, like with Everipedia in terms of just content and crypto, and then the EOS community being a subset of crypto, and then EOS. But I'm totally involved if people tweet at me or like mention me and stuff like that. So and then the other thing is, I think what the signal with them voting is that they're actually going to finally be taking a dip in the it's like a very overt signal that they're in the pool, so to speak, right? They're dipping their toes into what is the EOS mainnet pool, right? Like, and then they're going to jump in the water. You're right that it's nothing more than a toes dip in the water, right? But once they do that, right, it's like they're like, okay, well, we voted, voting is going well. Like we're voting, we're involved, we're getting some discussion with people who we voted for, or maybe other BPs and stuff. And it's just, it's one step at a time, right? The fact that they're doing that, I think, is a pretty big indicator that that's not all they're going to do, right? They're not going to dip their toes in and then walk away, right? So that's the voting. You're right. It's not alone. It doesn't make that much of a difference, or really any difference, right? Who cares? But it's more of the signal that it's the start of a bunch of things that are going to come afterwards.
Mm-hmm. So are you on Voice, by the way? Are you on the Voice beta? Have you been using that?
Yes, I actually am. I've taken a look at it. I think I actually tried to use it too early, because I actually tried to post something very, very early. Like I think in the 72 hours it was out, and then there was like an error or something. But it happens, I guess. It's happened on Everipedia too. So, but I couldn't actually post anything. So I've just been reading. I'm gonna try to make some predict posts and crypto posts on it. But I've been browsing it. I think it's cool and it's promising. Word of caution, I guess, so to speak, to the voice team is like, it's quite hard to, coming from someone that's, you know, built Everipedia and it's like a social DApp and stuff, it's quite hard to build a social DApp on blockchain. Growth is not as quickly as centralized applications. Growth does happen. Obviously, there's good usage of voice, there's good usage of Everipedia, but I think it's like a little bit of their people's expectations need to be tempered in terms of the timeline of that, right? People are like, well, why isn't Everipedia as big as Wikipedia or whatever? It's like, well, it's growing, but it's like, it's not going to be like that overnight or even over 1 year or 2 years or something. Wikipedia came out in 2001, I think, and it wasn't actually thought of as a serious, you know, knowledge base or like people going to read stuff like every day until like 2006. You know, it was just another niche site for like 5-6 years. And the thing is like, the thing about voice is people's expectations should be tempered on a long-term timeline. As someone that's worked on a decentralized social DApp that's still growing, and I think it's going to need to keep growing for, you know, another 12 to 24 months before it makes like a lot of you know, outside of crypto splash, you know, waves. I think people that are like, oh, when is voice coming out so that we could just, you know, take Facebook or Twitter by saying that's not going to happen very quickly. That's for sure. It's going to take some time, but I am excited. It's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, given the fact that, you know, $4 billion is, I mean, it's the whole of block one, but that's just like a piece of Facebook, right? If we just comparing on purely monetary terms, and then also you have that network effect, trying to get people to move to the new network is not easy. You know, discussions like that, we are a social media application as well. We've been out for like a year. We've only really getting started this year. But you're right, you know, building a social media application app is continuous, endless toil until that moment where, I mean, we haven't experienced it yet, but I think at one point it's just going to be that organic community is just going to take off on its own. But yeah, I think you're right. I think people should be, people's expectation of voice should be tempered a little bit.
Just any social DApp, right? Any social DApp. But the cool thing is, one thing I'll say is, I actually don't think, you know, 4 billion being whole of block one or like a piece of Facebook actually even matters. I think the fact that it's on the blockchain and stuff gives some asymmetric, you know, unique value propositions that if it's meant to be better than Facebook will, you know, like get people over to it without having to care about too much of the funding or size of the company. But the thing is, a lot of dApps have come out with this value proposition of like, people need to own their data or get paid for their data or whatever, and then have had limited traction, right? It has to be more than that for it to really, in my opinion, get a foothold, right? Because most people don't actually, you know, care. A lot of people obviously have the sophistication to care and be concerned, but there's just so many people that don't even understand that and also don't understand it, and to them it's not valuable. They're just using Twitter, they're just using Facebook to keep up with people. That if it actually was a concern of like global users of these social media applications, like, you know, Mastodon or the pre-blockchain stuff would have taken off more, or one of the blockchain ICO, you know, people with like a competent team would have taken off much more, right? And I think that's the difference with like Everipedia. We don't say like it's like private or you need to own the data or stuff. We say it's better in every way. You can have more content that you can't in the old, you know, Wikipedia or the 1.0 version of it. You also get tokens and it's governed in a transparent manner. You also can enjoy a better user experience, you know, in our opinion, right? And I think that's what's actually just led to it consistently growing instead of fizzling out, right? Because it's just better in every aspect, not like, oh, like you can own your data, right? Or like you can get paid for your data, but then everything else is kind of the same. It's like, you know, blog post, tweet, right? Like put picture up or something. Something about it has to be just better overall, and the whole data, you know, token mechanics and stuff, you know. So yeah.
It's like, you know, it's like electric cars before Tesla, right? Like you have all these, you know, kind of niche electric cars appealing to people's conscience of, you know, their environmental friendliness. But until you have a car that is better than a traditional car in every single aspect, you're just not gonna that
Exactly.
segment of the population.
Exactly, right? And you see that with every generational shift, right? Like, Tesla is a great example of it, right? The same thing with like, the internet and the early days of stuff, right? Like people were like, why should I use email if I can just mail people stuff? But, and it sounded so ridiculous now, right? But before, like with SMTP, you had to run your own server. You had to like, there wasn't like any of this stuff. This is like the early 90s, right? Like, and yeah, it actually makes a lot more sense to just mail a letter instead of run like an SMTP server and all of this stuff and, have to figure out how to do all of that, right? But then after you have Yahoo Mail and then all of this stuff and Gmail, and obviously, why would you ever mail something that you could email, right? And, right. So.
I agree. So let's kind of get off the heavy topics a bit. So you're kind of working on quite a few things. Frax Finance. Do you want to kind of touch on that a little bit? What is
Yeah,
that?
so that's So I try to work on a lot of stuff that I think is going to be big, and one of the main things for years, actually since like 2018, I was telling people stablecoins are going to be the biggest thing. Stablecoins are going to be huge, and in 2018, it sounded really dumb because ICOs were blowing up, and like everyone's like, "What the hell, stablecoins? Like what?" Yeah, like, how can I make money on that? It's literally like impossible. But I was like, no. Stable coins are going to be the thing that people actually transact most on. And so, unpopular opinion, I actually call myself a stablecoin maximalist, and I'm bearish on Bitcoin ever being anything other than like a collateral or reserve asset. I do think it'll be a good, crypto's collateral or reserve asset, but I don't think it's going to capture any of the value of monetary unit of account or anything. So Frax is, our stablecoin project, predominantly mine. I think my view is like algorithmic stablecoins are like kind of the holy grail, and they've never really been able to be launched in a successful manner. You don't have algorithmic stablecoins really being taken seriously anymore.
Explain what that means. Algorithm.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different types of stablecoins, right? There's three main ones, which are fiat backed, everyone knows, like Tether. Yeah. There's like crypto collateralized backed, like Maker, EOSDT on EOS, and it's just you over collateralize crypto to give the stable coin its value, right? And then there's algorithmic stable coins, which it was like Basis, which they now defunct, and Signard shares, which was only a proposal, was never released. But the idea is, instead of having collateral that backs the value of the stablecoin, when the price drops, you can try to buy back a lot of the stablecoin in circulation to recover the price. Mm-hmm. And then if the stablecoin is like above $1 because there's so much demand, you can also just print more and just sell it until it stays at $1 or the peg, right? And so it's basically a stablecoin that algorithmically changes its supply to keep its price stable, instead of have always 100% or more collateral backing it. And then, so what makes Frax interesting is it's a hybrid of these two. Frax gets its name from like fractional stablecoin. And so basically at the beginning, Frax is backed 100% by collateral on blockchain. It's not a fiat-backed stablecoin. It's actually backed by other stablecoins. And then as it grows, a little bit more of Frax goes into circulation incrementally, so that there's less and less collateral backing it. So like, for example, if everything is going well, and then there's more demand for Frax, some Frax will just get printed out and distributed to Frax share token holders. So there's a second token called the Frax share, and then they just get distributed out to them. And then if if the price holds, right, now Frax is only backed by 99% collateral, right? Because it was backed fully, and then now it's now there's more Frax in circulation than there is collateral. So it's actually fractionally backed, right? That process gives it that name. If the price holds at that, the next time there's more Frax demand, a little bit more will just get printed, right? Now it'll be like 98% backed. And then, there's only 98% backing, and then will it still trade at $1, or will it trade at 98 cents? Well, the amount that's collateral backed, right? If it trades at 98 cents, like, right, if people's confidence in the system is low, then what the system has to do is it has to buy back 2% of the supply, right? If it wants to recover the price, it has to buy back 2% of the supply to recover the price. And it does that by printing Frax shares, these tokens that actually get the printed money. So then sometimes it'll print shares to buy back to recover the price of Frax. And so the idea is you can algorithmically and transparently actually just measure what the market's view is on a stablecoin needing backing. Maybe the market thinks, okay, only 90% backing is necessary because there's sufficient confidence that if the price falls, 10% can be bought back. It's just a formality, right? It's like the system will just buy back 10%. And if the market thinks that, of course, people will probably trade it at around $1 because like they don't see the whole thing collapsing, right? And so the idea is like eventually, if there's more and more confidence in the system and the Frax share tokens have a really high market cap, you can essentially be pretty confident that like less than 90%, maybe 80%, 70%, 60% is only necessary to be backed. And the rest of that supply can be algorithmically managed, and things can still trade at $1, even though it's only 60% backed, for example, right? We don't know what that amount is, right? It could maybe only be 5% uncollateralized, right? Or it could be 50. We don't know. The idea is the whole protocol just runs and it just measures that. And then if the market doesn't value the price of Frax at $1, then the protocol just buys some of it back until it balances the price.
I see. So I see why you were, so again, I think it does come back to like PredIQt. I think that might, the thinking behind PredIQt might have something to do with Frax as well, kind of getting that information from a prediction market into the system to feed the algorithm essentially. So
yeah, I mean, we might be thinking of Winkwink some stablecoin support in the future, and it's possible that we might use Frax, or maybe.
Okay, well, I won't push you too much on that. I think, again, I think it's a really interesting project. It sounds like you guys are kind of still in the early stages, kind of still figure things out, but it does sound very interesting. I'm not a finance major, like the fact that I'm able to keep up is kind of been a miracle already. I know nothing about finance, but I do see the space developing, and from what I understand, it is very interesting. And it's again, it goes back to this idea of Bitcoin being the very beginning of this kind of alternative, openly accessible financial system. And now the instruments in it, the financial instrument in it, is just getting more and more mature. And it's going to get to the point where people could actually opt out of a traditional centralized system and just use systems like these that we're kind of working on. So
yeah, exactly, and that we want to help build that out on the EOS mainnet and stuff, because I personally think the only real two shows in town, at least for right now, is Ethereum and EOS. Obviously, there's like Polkadot, Algorand, all these big projects finally coming and stuff. I don't know, about like Tron and these other ones, but I think that we really are looking to build this stuff on EOS and also on Ethereum. Ethereum has a really good ecosystem, and we are looking at merging these two DeFi platforms, so to speak, so they can both benefit from liquidity gains.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you already see like this Ethereum, like wrap Bitcoins on the Ethereum network, and someone made a comment say how Ethereum is the biggest second layer for Bitcoin, more than Lightning Network, which is kind of funny. And
I believe it. No, I think that it'll be easier to move Bitcoin on Ethereum than on Lightning. Pretty much, that's one of the unpopular opinions that I think is going to happen.
Yeah, and I think the same is kind of extend to like some Ethereum functions. I don't know what it is fully yet, but that's those things are going to be more capable on the EOS mainnet, and we kind of see Blockone push kind of again dipping their toes in with like these competitions to get Ethereum contracts running on EOS. So it'd be interesting to see like what they have in mind for what is possible.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be an exciting summer for sure.
So I'm gonna wrap it up. I want to thank you so much for coming on, Sam. It was a fantastic conversation. I'm gonna let you have the last 2-3 minutes or so to kind of tell the audience what you guys are, what the audience should look forward to. How could they find you, and of course your Twitter handle, so they could go and bug you on Twitter.
Well, thanks for having me on. I'm really available on Twitter, on Telegram. actually have the same handle, just Sam Kazemian, thankfully. Pretty unique name, last name. So we're basically, a lot of our work right now is we've developed Everipedia 1.0. It's growing. It's a full-featured DApp. It's the first DApp announced on EOS. It's the biggest DApp right now in terms of like users and visitors and stuff. We're focusing heavily on DeFi and financial primitives and everything there, because I think it's the next crypto revolution. So if anyone is interested in getting involved in that with us, obviously please join our communities, hit me up, all of that stuff, right? It's pretty obvious, working on stablecoins, working on prediction markets, working on lending, all of this really, really high potential stuff. So that's where I think things are going. I'm really excited about it. I'm excited for EOS and for Ethereum about it. And so hopefully we can build this future out together.
Fantastic.